Hey guys, forget the tango, forget the wine. Tonight we're taking a journey through the real Argentina, the one that wakes up when the sun goes down and silence finally falls. I have one question for you. Could you survive a single day facing the creatures and curses that have terrified Argentines for generations? I'm going to prove you can't. We're going where cemetery angels weep for girls buried alive, where ancient forest guardians breathe, and where plantation dogs drag screaming workers straight down to hell. You won't just be listening to these stories, you'll be experiencing the raw terror of them. So before you pull up those blankets and dim the lights, hit the like button if you accept this challenge. Subscribe if you dare to face the things you can't unsee. And tell me in the comments, what's the one place you've been that truly felt cursed? Now get comfortable, but not too comfortable, because we're already here. And something in the Argentine shadows already knows you've arrived. You arrive in Buenos Aires on a humid evening, the kind where the air sticks to your skin like a warning. The city sprawls before you, elegant European architecture pressed against modern chaos. But you're not here for the tourist attractions. You're here for Recoleta Cemetery, and you're going at night, because that's when she appears. Rufina Cambaceres. You've read about her, the 19-year-old girl who died on her birthday in 1902, or at least everyone thought she died. You push through the ornate cemetery gates, just as the last orange light drains from the sky, and immediately you feel it. That particular silence that's too heavy, too watchful. Recoleta isn't like other cemeteries. The mausoleums here are miniature palaces. Art Nouveau angels frozen mid-flight. Marble corridors that belong to the wealthy even in death. Your footsteps echo off stone as you navigate the maze of tombs, and you're looking for one specific monument, the Cambaceres Mausoleum, with its weeping angel and its terrible secret. You find it easier than you expected, almost as if the paths guided you here. The tomb is beautiful, in that haunting way expensive grief always is. Elaborate carvings, the angel's face turned downward in eternal sorrow, and a heavy bronze door that shouldn't be moving but is just slightly, as if breathing. You step closer, and that's when you hear it. A sound so faint you think you imagined it. Scratching. From inside. Your rational mind tries to explain it away. Wind, settling stone, rats, maybe. But then you remember the story. Rufina collapsed at her birthday celebration, no pulse, no breath. Declared dead within hours. Her mother was hysterical. They buried her that very night in the family mausoleum, rushing through the rituals, because that's what wealthy families did in 1902 when they feared disease. But Rufina wasn't dead. She'd suffered a cataleptic episode, a condition that mimics death so perfectly that doctors were fooled. Imagine waking up in absolute darkness in a sealed coffin in a locked tomb and slowly realizing where you are. The scratching grows louder, more insistent, and you press your hand against the cold marble of the tomb entrance. You feel vibrations. Your heart hammers against your ribs as you peer through the gap in the bronze door, and in the darkness inside, you see marks, deep gouges in the wood of what must be the coffin lid, claw marks made by a girl desperately trying to escape her premature burial. When they found her days later, her body was outside the coffin, her fingernails broken and bloody, her face frozen in a final expression of terror and exhaustion. The scratching stops suddenly, and the silence that follows is worse. Then you feel it. Cold breath on the back of your neck. And when you turn around, she's there. A young woman in an elaborate Victorian burial dress, her dark hair loose around her pale shoulders, her eyes meeting yours with such profound sadness that your throat closes. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. You can feel her final hours radiating from her like cold. The confusion of waking in darkness, the growing panic, the screaming that no one heard, the scraping until her fingers bled, the suffocating realization that no one was coming. And then she's gone. Simply gone. And you're standing alone in front of her tomb, gasping, your own fingernails somehow dirty, as if you'd been the one scratching. You stumble away from the Cambaceres mausoleum, needing air, needing space, but Recoleta Cemetery has more to show you. The paths twist in ways that don't match the map you glanced at earlier, and you find yourself at the corner where Vicente Lopez and Ascuénaga streets meet, just outside the cemetery walls. It's later now, mist creeping along the ground, streetlights creating halos in the humidity. And that's when you see her, a girl, 15 maybe, stunningly beautiful in an old-fashioned white dress, standing alone. She smiles at you, and it's the kind of smile that makes you forget warnings, forget sense. You approach because how could you not? She's charming and mysterious, and when you suggest getting coffee, she accepts with a soft laugh that sounds like music from another era. You walk together through the neighborhood, and she's perfect. Funny, intelligent, just the right amount of shy. The night grows cold, and like a scene from a movie, you offer her your jacket. She accepts, pulling it around her shoulders, and promises to return it. Live just there, she says, pointing to an address near the cemetery. Come by tomorrow? You agree, already planning the visit, already half in love in that stupid way people fall when something feels magical. When you part ways, she walks toward the cemetery, and you tell yourself she's just taking a shortcut. The next day you arrive at the address she gave you with flowers, feeling both excited and nervous. An older woman answers the door, and when you ask for the girl, for your new friend, the woman's face drains of color. That's impossible, she whispers. My daughter died years ago. She's buried in Recoleta. You don't believe her, obviously, because you had coffee with her daughter last night. You lent her your jacket. You held her hand. But the mother insists, with tears now streaming down her face, that you visit the cemetery and see for yourself. So you do, walking back through those ornate gates, retreating steps that feel wrong in daylight until you find the tomb of Luz Maria Garcia Velloso, dead at 15 in 1925 from leukemia. There's a statue on her grave, a beautiful teenage girl lying dead in her bed, and draped across that cold marble statue, unmistakable and impossible, is your jacket. Your hands shake as you reach for it, and the fabric is cold. So cold as if it spent the night on stone rather than warm skin. You look at the statue's face, and it's her, the girl from last night, frozen forever at 15. The Lady in White, they call her. La Dama de Blanco. She appears on foggy nights, accepting the company and kindness of young men, perhaps seeking in death what illness stole from her in life. Romance, connection, the experience of being young and alive. You retrieve your jacket slowly, respect, fully. And when you turn to leave, you swear you hear that musical laugh one more time, echoing off a marble in memory. Buenos Aires isn't done with you yet, though honestly, you're wondering why you thought this trip was a good idea. Maybe stick to empanadas and football next time, just a thought. You find yourself in the Parque Chas neighborhood as afternoon fades, and you've heard about this place. The labyrinth, they call it. The streets here were designed in circular patterns in the early 20th century, but something went wrong. Or maybe something went right in a way that defies normal geometry. You start walking, following a street called Berna, which should curve gently and return you to where you started. Except it doesn't. The street curves, yes, but it curves in ways that shouldn't be possible. You pass the same corner 3 times, except each time the buildings look slightly different, like you're seeing variations of the same reality. A green door becomes blue, becomes green again. A corner store has a different name each time you pass. Your phone's GPS spins uselessly, unable to determine where you are, showing your location jumping kilometers away even though you've only walked for minutes. You try another street, Marseille, walking deliberately in the opposite direction, convinced that will break the pattern. It doesn't. 15 minutes later, you're somehow behind where you started, approaching your own back as if time and space folded wrong. This is what happened to those French explorers in 1957, the ones who accepted a challenge to navigate Parc des Chasses and ended up 3 kilometers away in Villa Urquiza with no memory of how they got there. This is what happened to the Catalan exploration team, whose 2 groups, walking opposite directions, found themselves following each other impossibly. The streets here don't obey normal rules. They curve in dimensions that maps don't account for. You walk for what feels like hours, but your watch says has been minutes, or you walk for what feels like minutes, but the sun says has been hours. The neighborhood is quiet, too quiet, no people visible, no cars passing, just you and the endlessly repeating curves of streets that trap you in their geometric spell. Panic starts creeping in, real panic, the kind that makes your breath shallow and your palms sweat. What if you never leave? What if you're just another story, another person who entered Parc des Chasses and was never quite the same? Writer Alejandro Dolina famously warned people not to even approach this neighborhood, and now you understand why? You try calling for help, but your phone has no signal despite showing full bars. You knock on a door, but no one answers. Or maybe no one's home. Or maybe the houses themselves are empty of everything but the neighborhood's strange geometry. Then, just when you're about to truly lose it, you turn a corner and find yourself on a main avenue outside Parc des Chasses, ejected from the labyrinth as suddenly as you were trapped. You look back at the circular streets and they look normal, harmless, just unusual urban planning. But you know better. You felt it. The maze that shouldn't exist. The geography that breaks physics. The neighborhood that swallows certainty and spits out confusion. You leave Buenos Aires because enough is enough, honestly, and head north to Salta province, to the sugar plantation regions where the air smells sweet and the history runs dark. It's late when you arrive at the old plantation, one that's been partially abandoned for decades, its refinery silent, its worker housing crumbling. You're here because of a legend that combines economics, desperation, and literal deals with the devil, El Familiar. The story goes that during economic collapse in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, sugar plantation owners were desperate to maintain their wealth. So they made a pact. They called upon the devil himself and offered a trade. 1 worker per year per plantation, sacrificed to hell in exchange for continued prosperity. The devil accepted and sent his collector El Familiar A massive black dog, sometimes headless, sometimes with burning red eyes, always dragging heavy chains, always hungry for the designated victim. You walk through the overgrown plantation fields as night settles, and the old fear here is palpable, soaked into the soil like blood, like sugar, like suffering. The workers knew, of course. They knew that every year someone would disappear, taken by the enormous black creature that appeared in the darkness. They carried blessed rosaries and crucifixes, prayed constantly, avoided angering the plantation owners, because being chosen as the sacrifice meant a fate worse than simple death. It meant being dragged by a monster straight down to hell. Your body never recovered, only scorch marks on the earth where you last stood. You hear it before you see it. The scraping, grinding sound of heavy chains being dragged across stone and earth. Your blood goes cold. That sound, metallic and deliberate, gets closer. You turn, scanning the darkness between the dead sugarcane stalks, and you see it. A shape darker than the night around it. Massive. Moving on 4 legs, but wrong somehow. Too large, too silent, except for those chains. El Familiar stands at the edge of the field, and you realize the legends didn't exaggerate. It's the size of a horse, but shaped like a dog, and where its head should be is either absent entirely, or a suggestion of a head with eyes that glow like coals. Smoke or steam rises from its body, and the smell hits you. Sulfur burning, the scent of fire and damnation. The creature stares at you, or seems to, and you feel assessed, measured, judged. Are you the sacrifice? Did simply being here mark you? The chains scrape again as it takes a step toward you, and that sound alone is enough to send you running. You crash through the dead cane field, thorns tearing at your clothes, your breath coming in gasps, and behind you the padding of enormous paws and the relentless chain scraping and something that might be breathing or might be the growl of hellfire itself. You run until your lungs burn, until your legs scream, until you burst out of the plantation grounds and onto a road where the creature cannot or will not follow. You look back, and it's gone, but the smell of sulfur lingers, and on your skin are small burn marks, as if something hot passed very close but decided this time to let you go. You catch your breath and wonder, not for the first time, why you keep putting yourself through this. Maybe you're just committed to the bit at this point. The night is far from over, and you're deep in the northwest now, where the mountains rise like ancient teeth and caves hide secrets that predate European conquest by centuries. You've heard about La Salamanca. Not a single place, but a type of place. Caves where witches gather every Friday night to perform dark rituals and make pacts with Supé, the devil of indigenous and colonial fusion. You find one of these caves in a remote area. It's in Transamouth, in the mountainside that seems to exhale darkness. You're not foolish enough to enter, at least not yet, but you watch from a distance as night deepens, and they come. You see them, figures moving through the darkness, some walking, some appearing to fly or float, converging on the cave entrance. Women mostly dressed in black or nothing at all, their hair loose, their movements deliberate. Witches, brujas. They enter the cave, and from within comes the sound of drums, rhythmic and hypnotic, pulling at something deep in your brainstem, something pre-civilizational. You smell smoke, tobacco, herbs you don't recognize, something sweet and wrong. The temperature drops despite it being summer, and your breath fogs. Against every survival instinct you possess, You move closer to the cave entrance, drawn by morbid curiosity and the unshakable pull of those drums. At the entrance, you peer inside, and the scene before you is something out of fever dreams and forbidden texts. The cave interior is vast, lit by fires that burn in unnatural colors, green, purple, blue. Figures dance in circles around these flames, their movements ecstatic and abandoned. At the center, on a throne carved from stone, sits a figure that makes your eyes hurt to look at directly. Sometimes it appears as a handsome man in black, beautiful and terrible, with eyes that promise everything you've ever wanted. Sometimes it's horned and hoofed, a classic devil from church paintings. The figure shifts between forms, and you realize this is Supay himself, presiding over the ritual. The air is thick with incense and other smells, blood, sex, sulfur, flowers. Participants drink from shared cups, their lips staining dark. The drumming reaches a crescendo, and the dancers move faster, their faces ecstatic or agonized. You can't tell which. One of the witches notices you, her head snapping toward the entrance where you're frozen. Her eyes glow in the firelight, and she smiles, beckoning. Others turn to look. Supay himself shifts his attention toward you, and when his gaze lands, it's like being pierced by hooks. He speaks, and his voice is inside your head, offering you everything: power, wealth, love, success, all yours for such a small price. Just step inside, just join the dance, just offer a little something, barely anything really, just your soul or your first child or 7 years of service. Nothing at all compared to what you'll gain. The offer is intoxicating, and you feel your foot move forward, ready to step across the threshold, ready to accept, when something, some last vestige of self-preservation, makes you step back instead. The cave's inhabitants hiss in disappointment or anger, and you run again, stumbling down the mountain path. The drums following you for kilometers, the smell of that incense clinging to your clothes for days. You need nature, you need something clean, so you flee deeper into the countryside, into forested areas where you hope the only dangers are natural ones, like jaguars or getting lost. Silly you, thinking Argentina's wilderness is any safer than its cities or caves. You're walking through dense forest, the canopy thick above you, when you first hear it, your own voice calling your name from deeper in the trees. You freeze because you're not calling yourself. You are standing here silent. The voice comes again, your voice, perfect mimicry calling you forward. This is El Pombero, the forest guardian, the small hairy creature with backward feet who protects the wilderness and torments those who disrespect it. You don't see him, not directly, but you feel his presence, a watching weight, a sense of being served by something ancient and not entirely benign. Objects you set down disappear. Your water bottle, which you placed beside a tree, is gone. Your compass, which was in your pocket, is now hanging from a branch 3 meters above your head. You hear whistling that circles you, coming from all directions, and footsteps that sound like they're approaching but leave tracks going the opposite direction. Those backward feet, they say, make him impossible to track. And then the mimicry escalates. You hear your friend's voice calling for help, screaming your name in terror. Your rational mind knows your friend isn't here, isn't even in Argentina, but the voice is perfect, and the fear in it sounds real, and you find yourself running toward it, deeper into the forest, exactly what El Pombero wants. You crash through undergrowth, following the cries for help. until suddenly you realize you're completely lost. The forest around you is unfamiliar, and you've been led in circles or away from any path. The crying stops. The whistling stops. There's only silence and the sound of your own ragged breathing. You failed the test, you realize. You entered his forest without respect, without offerings, without permission. You neither left tobacco nor honey nor alcohol at the forest edge. You took El Pombero for folklore rather than truth, and now you're paying the price. You wander for hours, or is it days? Time feels wrong here, stretching and compressing. Your supplies dwindle. Exhaustion sets in. Every direction looks the same. Trees seem to move when you're not looking directly at them, rearranging themselves to maintain your confusion. Finally desperate, you do what you should have done at the start. You stop, take out your remaining food, just some bread and dried fruit, and place it at the base of a large tree. You speak out loud, voice cracking, offering apology and respect to El Pombero, asking for guidance out of his forest, promising to honor him properly. For a long moment, nothing happens. Then you notice a path you swear wasn't there before, and following it leads you, impossibly quickly, to the forest edge. You've been released. You look back at the tree line and you see him, just for a second. A small, hairy figure with a wide-brimmed hat, watching you with eyes that contain both amusement and warning. You've learned your lesson. Nature demands respect, and in Argentina, that respect has a name and a face and backward footprints that you'll never follow again. The encounters are accumulating, weighing on you like sleep deprivation, like trauma, like the gradual realization that the world contains more than material reality accounts for. You travel south, toward Patagonia, because what's a little more terror among friends, right? You've heard about Nahuelito? Argentina's lake monster, and Nahuel Huapi Lake is breathtaking in that way. Enormous, ancient bodies of water always are, beautiful and vaguely threatening. You're on a boat, because of course you are, because learning lessons isn't your strong suit. The water is dark, that peculiar dark that comes from depth and cold, and possibly from hiding something massive beneath its surface. The lake is over 500 meters deep in places, largely unexplored, and indigenous Mapuche legends speak of something living here long before Europeans arrived. It's early morning mist clinging to the water's surface when you see it. At first you think it's a log or rock formation, but then it moves. Humps, 3 or 4 of them, breaking the water's surface in a line, undulating smoothly, and they're big. Each hump is the size of a car, which means whatever's beneath connecting them is enormous. Your boat's engine cuts out, which is just perfect timing, and in the sudden silence you hear it, a sound like a whale's breath, deep and resonant, coming from where? Those humps are slowly submerging. The water around your boat ripples from the movement of something vast passing underneath, and you feel the vibrations through the hull, a thrumming that resonates in your chest. You lean over the side, peering down, and in the dark water you see a shape. Serpentine, impossibly long, covered in what might be scales or barnacles, too large to be any known fish or aquatic mammal. A head breaks the surface 30 meters away, and you get a clear look. Elongated like a swan's or a plesiosaur's, skin that looks leathery and ancient, eyes that are intelligent and cold. Nahuelito. It regards you with what feels like curiosity rather than aggression, and you're frozen. half from fear and half from the sheer impossibility of what you're seeing. This creature is a living anachronism, something that shouldn't exist in the modern world but does, thriving in the cold, deep isolation of this Patagonian lake. It watches you for what feels like an eternity but is probably only seconds, then submerges smoothly, the humps disappearing one by one, leaving only ripples that spread and fade. Your engine starts again on the first try, as if permission has been granted to leave, and you pilot the boat back to shore on shaking hands, knowing you saw something science doesn't acknowledge, but that has lived in these waters for longer than human memory can reach. Patagonia has more to show you, because of course it does. That night, you're staying in a small rural house, the kind travelers rent for authentic gaucho experiences, and it's a Friday night during a full moon, which is either cosmically terrible timing or exactly when this had to happen. You hear from the locals about El Lobizon, the werewolf curse that afflicts the seventh consecutive son born to a family. It's not metaphor. It's not allegory. According to everyone here, it's simply fact embedded so deeply in Argentine culture that there's a literal law making the president the symbolic godfather of every seventh son to protect them from being abandoned, or worse, by superstitious families. You're in bed when you hear the first howl, and it's not like dog howls or wolf howls you've heard before. This combines those animal sounds with something human, a scream tangled with a growl, throat shredding and agonized. It's coming from somewhere close, maybe the field behind the house, and against every horror movie lesson you've internalized, you go to the window and look out. The full moon illuminates the Patagonian landscape in silver, and you see him, the Lobizon. He's hunched at the edge of the field, and he's wrong, caught between human and wolf, his body elongated and twist-head, covered in matted fur but retaining human proportions in his torso and limbs. His face is the worst part, a snout filled with teeth but with human eyes, human expressions of confusion and pain twisting those animal features. He's transforming, you realize, or maybe recently transformed, because he seems disoriented, looking at his clawed hands as if not recognizing them. The legend says the seventh son transforms at midnight every full moon Friday, losing all humanity, becoming a beast that hunts anything living. You watch, horrified and fascinated, as he drops to all fours, the human confusion leaving his eyes, replaced by predator focus. He sniffs the air, then his head snaps toward your window, toward you, and those yellow eyes lock onto yours. Time stops. Your breath stops. He sees you, and then he's running, impossibly fast on all fours, straight toward the house. You stumble away from the window, hearing him hit the side of the building, claws scraping against wood, that terrible howl scream right outside. You back into the farthest corner, grabbing the only weapon available, a wooden chair, and wait for him to break through. But he doesn't. The scratching continues, the growling, the pacing around the house. But he doesn't come in. Maybe there's still something human in there, some awareness that prevents him from actual ally breaking in to kill. Or maybe it's the crucifix above the door, the one you noticed earlier and thought was just decorative. The night stretches on forever, every minute and hour, while outside the Lobizon prowls and howls and scratches. Finally, as dawn approaches, the sounds change. The growling becomes whimpering. Then those terrible between sounds of bones cracking and reforming. By the time the sun rises, there's silence. You wait a full hour before gathering courage to look outside, and what you find is a naked young man, early 20s maybe, unconscious in the dirt beside your house, his body covered in scratches and blood. Whether his or from some prey he caught before coming here, you can't tell. His fingernails are torn and bloody. This is the curse. Every full moon Friday, transformation, hunting, then waking at dawn with no memory but covered in evidence of the night's horror. You leave before he wakes because what would you even say? You flee Patagonia, flee south entirely, and head west to the Cuyo region, to Mendoza and San Juan provinces, where the landscape shifts to arid desert, and the legends shift from creatures to curses to tragedies so profound they transcend death. You visit Vallecito in San Juan, where Maria Antonia de Olinda Correa's shrine draws over 1 million pilgrims annually, and you need to understand why. The story is simple and devastating. During Argentina's civil wars in the 1840s, Maria's husband was conscripted. She followed on foot across brutal desert, carrying their infant son, and she died of exposure and thirst on a desolate hillside. When cattlemen found her body days later, she was clearly dead, but her baby was alive, still nursing from her corpse. Her body, even in death, had continued producing milk to keep her child alive. Maternal love transcending mortality itself. The shrine is overwhelming. The main chapel is surrounded by smaller buildings, and every surface is covered in offerings. But it's the water bottles that get you. Thousands upon thousands of plastic water bottles, covering walls, piled in rooms, glinting in the desert sun. Pilgrims bring water because she died of thirst, offering her in death what she lacked in life. There are also license plates, hundreds of them from every province in Argentina and beyond, left by drivers asking for safe passage. Oh, there are photographs, letters, candles, model houses, crutches from people claiming miracle healings, wedding dresses from grateful brides. The sheer accumulation of devotion is staggering. You walk through the shrine as sun sets and the atmosphere shifts. The crowds thin. The desert silence grows heavier. You feel her here, not as a frightening presence, but as a profound sadness and an equally profound love. You think about her last hours, stumbling across endless desert, sun burning down, her baby crying, her body failing, knowing she was dying but unable to stop. The desperation, the mother terror of knowing your child will die if you don't survive. And somehow, impossibly, her body kept him alive, even after she was gone. You leave your own offering, a bottle of water placed carefully among thousands of others, and a whispered prayer to a woman who died nearly 200 years ago, but whose presence remains powerfully alive. As you leave, you swear you feel cool air, like a hand on your shoulder, like gratitude or blessing, and some of the terror that's been accumulating in your chest loosens slightly. Not all of Argentina's legends are about monsters. Some are about love, powerful enough to conquer death itself. But peace never lasts long on this journey because you're determined to be thorough, or maybe you're just a glutton for punishment. You return to the northwest, to the most forbidden places. Because you need to see La Salamanca again. But this time you're going inside. It's Friday night. Of course it's Friday night. And you've prepared, or you think you have. You've armed yourself with crucifixes, blessed salt, holy water, prayers memorized, all the Catholic protection available. What you haven't prepared for is how badly you'll want to enter once you see it again. The cave mouth is ahead, and tonight it glows with firelight from within, and the drums are already pounding, and the smell of incense and ritual herbs drifts out to meet you. You step inside, past the threshold where you stopped last time, and immediately the air changes. Thicker, warmer, charged with something that makes your skin prickle. The cave interior is vast and decorated with symbols painted in red and black on the walls. Symbols that hurt to look at directly. Candles and fires burn everywhere, casting dancing shadows. People are here, dozens of them, dancing in slow circles around a central fire where someone is chanting in a language you don't recognize. You try to stay in the shadows, just observing. But a hand grabs your arm. A woman with wild hair and wilder eyes. "You came," she says, delighted. "He's been waiting for you." Before you can protest or flee, she's pulling you deeper into the cave, toward the throne at the center where Sapai sits. He's in his beautiful form tonight, appearing as a man in his 30s, devastatingly handsome, dressed in black, with eyes that contain galaxies, or maybe just reflections of firelight. "Welcome," he says, and his voice is smooth like expensive whiskey, warm like a fire on a cold night. "I knew you'd come back. They always do." He offers you a cup containing liquid that shimmers wrong, colors that shouldn't exist. "Drink," he says. "Dance with us. Accept what I offer and you'll have everything you've ever wanted. Wealth, power, talent beyond measure, love that consumes, all yours for such a small price." You know the stories, you know the price, but God, you're tempted. The dancers around you seem ecstatic, their faces showing pleasure beyond anything mortal life offers. The promises whisper in your mind. Imagine never struggling again. Imagine being desired. Imagine having purpose and power and all your inadequacies erased. Imagine. The cup is in your hand, though you don't remember taking it, and you're raising it to your lips when you see them. The dancers up close. Their ecstasy is real, but beneath it is something else. Horror, despair, addiction. They're trapped, you realize. The pleasure is real, but it's also a cage, and once you drink, once you accept, you're marked forever. You'll belong to this cave, to these rituals, to Supay himself, and the cost will be extracted in pieces. Your peace, your loved ones, your ability to exist in daylight, your soul measured out in payments until nothing remains but the compulsion to return here every Friday, dancing and drinking and giving more and more of yourself to a darkness that never satisfies. You drop the cup, liquid spilling across stone, and the hissing that rises from the assembled witches and warlocks is like steam, like rage. Supay's beautiful face doesn't change expression, but his eyes do. Disappointment and promise and threat all at once. "You'll be back," he says with certainty. "They always come back." You run again, always running, bursting out of La Salamanca into cold night air that feels like salvation. Behind you, the drums continue, and you know that Cave will be there next free day and every Friday after, waiting, because La Salamanca never closes, and the invitations once extended remain open forever. Days blur together as you travel, encountering smaller horrors, briefer terrors. You see La Luz Mala, the evil light, dancing across a field at night. Blue-green phosphorescence that beckons and tempts, promising treasure or just the hypnotic call of souls trapped between worlds. You wisely don't follow it, having learned at least one lesson. But you watch it pulse and drift, and the air around it smells of sulfur and decay. In a different forest, you leave careful offerings for El Pombero before entering. Tobacco, honey, alcohol. And this time he leaves you unmolested, though you hear his whistling in the distance, approval or acknowledgement or just his nature. You visit the Church of Santa Felicitas in Buenos Aires' Barracas neighborhood, where Felicitas Guerrero died at 26, shot by a jealous suitor who couldn't accept her choosing another man. The church is beautiful and sad, and you notice what the legend promised. Every angel statue at the front has their right wing positioned downward, pointing to where Felicitas was shot. You stay until evening and you hear it, a woman weeping, though you're alone in the church, and bells ring with no one pulling the rope. You're tired now, bone tired, soul tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from too many encounters with the impossible, too many narrow escapes, too many moments when reality proved thinner and stranger than comfort allows. You travel to the Mesopotamia region, to the provinces of Misiones and Corrientes, where the legends take on a different flavor, influenced by Guarani traditions and the thick, humid forests that blanket the land. You hear about the Yasi Yatare, the blonde goblin who lures children with his magic staff, and about the Pombero again, stronger here in the north where the tradition originated. You're careful, so careful, moving through this landscape with hard-won respect. But even respect doesn't always protect you, because some legends find you whether you seek them or not. You're walking a rural road at dusk when you hear it. The scraping of chains and the heavy breath of something large. Not El Familiar, you're far from sugar plantations, but Al-Mamula, the cursed woman who transforms on Fridays and during storms into a monstrous mule-like creature. It's Friday, because of course your timing is perfect, and there's a storm building, thunder rolling in from the distance. You see her transform, and it's as agonizing to witness as the legends described. A woman standing by the roadside convulses, her scream becoming an animal bray, her body cracking and reshaping, bones breaking and reforming, until where the woman stood is a huge mule creature with flames licking from her nostrils and mouth, dragging heavy chains that spark against the road. Her eyes meet yours, and in them is such profound suffering, such endless shame and despair, that you almost forget to be afraid. Almost. Because she's charging now, flames and fury, and you remember what breaks the curse. A blessed knife driven into the ground before her. You don't have a blessed knife, you have a pocket knife that's never seen a priest. But desperation makes you try anyway. You pull it out and stab it into the earth at your feet, making the sign of the cross, as best you remember, shouting prayers that are more panic than devotion, and somehow, impossibly, it works. Or maybe her curse momentarily lifts on its own, or maybe she simply decides to spare you. The creature stops, rears back, and in a shimmer of heat and anguish, she's human again. A naked woman, middle-aged, her body marked with burns, collapsing to the road and weeping. You offer her your jacket, not knowing what else to do, and she takes it with shaking hands. "It will come back," she whispers, "next Friday forever." You don't know what to say to that, to a curse with no end, so you just sit with her in the dirt until the storm breaks and rain washes over both of you, and eventually she rises and walks away into the darkness, still carrying your jacket, and you let her go. The encounters have changed you, you realize. You're seeing connections now between the legends, understanding the patterns. Argentina's urban legends aren't random. They're a map of the country's soul, its fears and values and history encoded in supernatural form. El Familiar represents labor exploitation. La Difunta Correa embodies maternal sacrifice, and the brutality of civil war. El Lobizon reflects superstition so powerful it required government intervention. Alma Mula is patriarchal punishment for female sexuality. La Salamanca is colonialism's fusion of indigenous shamanism and Catholic demonology. Each legend is a story Argentina tells about itself, about what it fears and what it values, about the price of civilization and the persistence of wildness. You're in Cordoba now, in the central province, and the legends here feel older somehow, more deeply rooted. You visit rural areas where people still speak of the Lobizon with absolute conviction, where farmers leave offerings for spirits of the fields, where the old ways persist beneath modern Catholic overlay. You're staying in a small rural house again. Apparently you enjoy tempting fate, and it's late when you hear scratching at your door. Not aggressive, not violent, just persistent. You open it copiously, expecting some horror, but instead you find a small dog, bedraggled and friendly, wagging its tail. You let it in, feed it some scraps, let it sleep by the fire. In the morning it's gone, and the family who owns the house goes pale when you mention it. What color? They ask. Brown and black about this big friendly, you say. They cross themselves. That's the familiar, they whisper, not the demon dog of sugar plantations, but a different familiar, a protective spirit that tests households by appearing as a harmless animal. If you're kind to it, you're blessed. If you're cruel, you're cursed. You apparently pass the test, which is a nice change of pace. The legends continue, layering and accumulating, but you're noticing something else now. You're not as afraid anymore. Terror has a limit, and you've exceeded it, pushed through to something else on the other side. Not comfort exactly, but acceptance. Argentina's supernatural landscape is simply part of its reality, as present as the Andes or the Pampas or the wine regions. The legends aren't metaphors or entertainment. They're the country's way of encoding truth that facts alone can't capture. They're warnings, yes, but also invitations to see the world as more than material, to acknowledge that rationalism doesn't exhaust reality, that mystery persists. You make your way back toward Buenos Aires as your journey winds down, and the city feels different now, less intimidating, more familiar. You return to Recoleta Cemetery in daylight this time, and it's beautiful in a way you couldn't appreciate before, when fear clouded everything. You visit Rufina's tomb and leave flowers, a gesture of respect and apology for intruding on her eternal restlessness. You walk through Parque Chas in broad daylight and still get turned around, but you laugh about it this time, accepting the neighborhood's strangeness as part of its charm. You visit the Palace of the Bugs on Campana Street, the abandoned mansion where a wedding celebration was interrupted by tragedy, where neighbors still hear music and dancing on certain nights. You stand outside and listen, and you do hear something. Faint, like a record player several rooms away waltz music from another era. The Argentine legends have taught you something valuable, you realize as you prepare to leave the country. They've taught you that the world contains more than you thought, that mystery isn't some thing to fear, but something to respect, that the boundary between possible and impossible is more negotiable than rationalism admits. They've taught you that every culture carries its soul in its stories, and Argentina's soul is passionate and tragic and fierce, shaped by vast, lonely landscapes and cosmopolitan cities, by indigenous wisdom and colonial violence, by gauchos and tango, and disappeared persons and mothers who march in protest. The legends are part of that soul, the part that can't be reduced to politics or economics or history alone. You're on the plane, leaving Buenos Aires, looking down at the city as it shrinks beneath you, and you're already thinking about the legends you didn't have time to fully explore. The golem of Barrio once, protecting Buenos Aires' Jewish community. The lost subway stations where ghosts in period clothing board trains that go nowhere. The chonchon, the detached human head that flies through Patagonian nights screeching warnings. The Ciudad de los Césares, the phantom city of gold that appears and disappears in southern mountains. The Vieja del Rio, the river hag who drowns disrespectful swimmers. So many stories, so many encounters you didn't have time for, so many terrors and wonders you only glimpsed. But you're grateful for the ones you did experience, even though you're also grateful to be leaving. Grateful for the distance and safety of altitude and international borders. You wouldn't last a day fetching Argentina's urban legends. Not really. Not if you tried to marathon them the way you just did. No one could. They're too intense, too real, too deeply embedded in landscape and culture to be casual entertainment. They demand respect, demand attention, demand that you acknowledge forces larger and stranger than individual human will. As the plane reaches cruising altitude and Buenos Aires disappears entirely, replaced by clouds and eventually by the Atlantic, you feel something settle in your chest. Peace, maybe, or just exhaustion, profound enough to resemble peace. You close your eyes and see them all again in memory. Rufina scratching in her tomb, the lady in white smiling in the mist, Parquechas folding space impossibly, El Familiar's burning eyes, La Salamanca's terrible promises, the Lobazon's agonized transformation, Nahuelito's ancient head breaking the surface, Maria Antonia's shrine covered in water bottles, Almamula's curse-twisted form, El Pombero's backward footprints, all of them, a procession of wonders and horrors dancing through your memory like La Luz Mala dances across fields, hypnotic and dangerous and impossible to forget. You're safe now, you tell yourself as sleep tugs at you. That particular exhaustion that follows adrenaline and fear, finally being allowed to relax. You're safe in this plane, safe heading home, safe from the legends that stalk Argentina's nights and days. But part of you knows that's not entirely true. Or because you drank from Argentina's cup of mysteries, even if you didn't drink from Supe's cup in La Salamanca. You walked through the labyrinth and emerged changed. You looked into Nahuelito's inscient eyes and recognized something that predates human certainty. You felt El Pombero's forest close around you and learned what respect truly means. You heard Almamula's suffering and understood that some curses have no end, no resolution, just endless Friday nights of transformation and shame. The legends aren't trapped in Argentina, you realize, as sleep finally claims you. They're in you now, carried in memory and understanding. A new way of seeing the world that acknowledges shadows and mysteries alongside facts and reason. You wouldn't last a day facing Argentina's urban legends in the way you did, that concentrated exposure to the impossible. But you don't need to. A day was enough, more than enough to last a lifetime. The legends have given you their lessons, carved them into your consciousness, and you'll carry them forever. Not as trauma, but as knowledge, as the understanding that the world is wider and stranger and more wonderful and terrible than the daylight world admits. And if sometimes, in quiet moments, you hear the scraping of chains that aren't there, or see lights dancing at the edge of your vision, or feel watched by something with backward footprints, well, that's just Argentina reaching across distance and time, reminding you of what you learned. Reminding you that mystery persists, that legends live, that the boundary between possible and impossible is thinner than you ever imagined. Sleep comes gently, finally, and your dreams are full of forests and caves and lakes and cemeteries, of creatures that shouldn't exist but do, of women cursed and blessed and transformed, of landscapes that hold memory in their stones and soil. Argentina's legends have marked you, but not cruelly. They've simply shown you truth that can't be spoken any other way. And for that, despite the terror, despite the exhaustion, despite everything, you're quietly, profoundly grateful. Rest now, traveler. You've earned it. The legends will be there if you ever return, waiting patiently, eternally, as legends always do. Waiting to teach their lessons again. To the next person brave enough or foolish enough to listen. But for tonight, for now, just rest. Let the memories settle. Let the fear fade. Let Argentina's shadows recede to a comfortable distance. You survived. You learned. You witnessed. And that in the end is enough. Sleep well, and when you wake, the world will seem a little different, a little wider, a little more full of possibility and mystery. That's the gift the legends give, beneath the fear. The reminder that we live in a world more marvelous and terrible than we can fully comprehend. And that sometimes, just sometimes, it's worth facing what terrifies us to learn what lies beyond the edge of the known. Good night, traveler. Safe dreams, though they'll likely be stranger than they were before. And if you hear scratching, or chains, or howls, or whispered promises in the dark, well, now you'll know what they are. And knowing, at least, is half the battle. The other half is remembering to leave offerings for El Pombero before entering his forests, to respect the boundaries between worlds, and to never ever chase La Luz Mala across the fields, no matter how beautiful and tempting those dancing lights appear. Rest now. Argentina's legends have released you, for now.